The Veteran's Song: How a Music Teacher Rescued a War-Torn Heart. Welcome to Hearthside Stories 25, where every stitch, every tear, and every second chance comes to life. Pull up a chair, settle in, and let your heart listen. Because here we tell the stories that warm your soul and remind you what it means to be human. He walked into a quiet auditorium, carrying nothing but a trumpet and years of silence. What happened next? Turned pain into peace and grief into grace. Stay till the end and find out. The town of Maple Hollow, Ohio wasn't big. The kind of place where the grocery store cashier still knew your birthday and people waved from porches they'd sat on for decades. And on Tuesday evenings, the heart of the town didn't beat in the city hall or the church basement. It beat inside the Maple Hollow High School auditorium, where the community music ensemble gathered to rehearse. Inside that dusty old room, filled with creaky chairs and scuffed floors, retired music teacher Mrs. Clara Wren stood at the center like a conductor of more than music. She was the keeper of memories, the mentor of misfits, and the patient heart of a town that often forgot how to listen. Clara had taught music for 35 years before retiring. She wasn't rich, didn't travel, but she left a legacy in every former student who could still hum Beethoven or recall the exact day she told them their voice mattered. She believed in the healing power of music, in notes that reached places words couldn't. Every week, Clara opened the auditorium doors and welcomed anyone, former students, postal workers, teenage moms, lonely widowers, retired truck drivers, anyone who needed a place to belong, a song to sing, or just a reason to leave the house. Then one Tuesday in late September, it rained. The kind of rain that soaked the sidewalks and filled the gutters. Rehearsal ended early. Clara stayed behind to tidy up, humming quietly as she collected sheet music and reminded herself to oil the old piano pedals. That's when she saw him, sitting silently in the farthest corner of the auditorium. Second row from the back, third seat from the left. A man, late 30s or early 40s. Face rough around the edges. Hood up, eyes distant. He didn't clap, didn't move. Just watched the empty stage like it held something he'd lost. Clara had never seen him before. She walked slowly to the back, wiping her hands on a cloth. "You here for the music or the silence?" she asked gently. The man looked up, startled. His voice, when it came, was gravel low. Didn't mean to intrude. Just needed somewhere to sit. "Well," Clara said with a warm half-smile, "lucky for you. These seats haven't been picky in years." He nodded, about to leave, but paused as the rain hit harder against the windows. Clara sat 2 rows ahead of him, leaving space. "My name's Clara. What's yours?" "Caleb. Caleb," she repeated, like testing the sound of it. "Nice to meet you. That trumpet over there belong to you?" He didn't answer, just looked away. That was fine. Clara knew better than to press. "Rehearsals every Tuesday," she said, standing up. "Doesn't matter if you play like a beginner or haven't played in years. We just show up. That's the first note." She turned and walked away, her words light but deliberate. Behind her, Caleb sat still, watching her go. The next Tuesday, he came back. The next Tuesday evening, the auditorium lights flickered on just before 6 p.m. Clara arrived early, as always, bag full of sheet music, thermos of tea in hand. She laid out scores on music stands, tuned the old, upright piano, and gave the microphone a gentle tap that echoed through the empty space. The band trickled in. Mr. Wallace from the bakery on clarinet, shy teenage twins on violin, and Dana, the exhausted mother of 3, on cello. Laughter and tuning notes filled the room like old friends reuniting. Then he walked in. Caleb, no hood this time, just a weathered military jacket and eyes that still refused to meet anyone else's. He sat in the back again, same row, same seat. Clara noticed something beside him this time. A trumpet case, black, scratched but intact, the kind they used in school bands across the country. She didn't say a word about it, just handed out the warm-up pieces and gave a nod when his eyes met hers. As rehearsal began, Clara worked her usual magic, blending rusty harmonies, encouraging off-key beginners, and making space for mistakes. Her direction was patient, but purposeful. She made people believe they could try again. About 20 minutes in, she gently asked, were short of brass today. Anyone feeling bold? No one moved, until a chair scraped against the wood floor. Caleb stood. Slowly, awkwardly, he walked to the front. Every eye turned. A few whispered. Some recognized him vaguely from town or had heard about him through secondhand stories. Marine, quiet, lost people, came back different. Caleb opened the trumpet case like he was revealing an old wound. The instrument inside was old but clean, clearly cared for. Clara could see his hands trembling as he lifted it. He didn't look at the sheet music. He didn't ask what key. He just played. At first, it came out raw. Notes like gravel, rough and cracked. Like a cry held too long in the throat. But there was music in it. A memory. A message. The room stilled. No one interrupted. Not even Clara. He finished with a broken note and lowered the trumpet slowly, avoiding everyone's gaze. Silence hung in the air. Then Clara stepped forward and gently placed a sheet of music on the stand in front of him. At the top, in careful cursive, one word was written. Home. He stared at it. No words. Just a slow exhale, as if someone had handed him air he forgot he needed. That old trumpet hadn't made a sound in years, but the moment Caleb played, the room didn't hear just notes. It heard grief, grit, and a man trying to find his way back. Sometimes, music doesn't come from the lungs. Sometimes it comes from the places in us that hurt the most. The auditorium became a kind of ritual for Caleb. Every Tuesday evening, he showed up. Never early, never late, always quiet, trumpet case in hand. He still didn't say much, not during tuning, not after rehearsal. But each week, his playing grew more sure. Less like a man surviving, more like a man searching. Clara noticed the change first. He started staying a few minutes longer, helping her fold music stands, holding the door open for Dana, the cellist, when her toddler fell asleep in her arms. He even nodded at Mr. Wallace from the bakery, who began bringing an extra glazed donut every week and leaving it wrapped in foil on the seat next to Caleb's. But the most telling change? The way he played. No longer jagged or sharp like broken glass. Now it was tender, bruised, even hopeful. Like he was trying to remember something he'd forgotten how to feel. One night, Clara arrived early to find the auditorium already lit. She stepped in confused, only to freeze mid-step. There, under the dim house lights, Caleb stood on stage alone, trumpet in hand, eyes closed, playing a slow, aching melody. It was the first few bars of Eternal Father, Strong to Save, a hymn known to every soldier, sailor, and widow who had ever wept at a military funeral. But midway through, the melody wavered. His breath caught, his hands shook, and the notes collapsed into silence. Caleb just stood there, motionless. Claire didn't speak. She simply walked up the aisle and sat in the third row. When he finally looked up, his voice cracked. I used to play that for them. Before patrols, after missions, sometimes even during them. I thought maybe it made them feel human again. He paused, but none of it saved them. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was sacred. Clara rose slowly, walked to the edge of the stage, and looked him in the eye. Music was never about saving others, Caleb. It's about saving what's left of you. She gently reached for his trumpet, wiped the mouthpiece with a cloth, and placed it back in the case. You still have breath in your lungs. That means your story isn't finished. We think broken men stay silent. But the truth is, some of them are just waiting for someone to sit still long enough to hear their music. Not the polished parts, the raw notes, the off-key memories, the moments where grief hums under every breath. From that night on, something inside Caleb shifted. He began showing up early. He started helping Clara tune the piano, carefully pressing each key like it was a fragile truth. He stayed after practice to talk, just a little, about music, about childhood, about the cornfield behind his old house where he used to play when the Saints go marching in for his mom. And week by week, the man who once sat in the shadows began stepping back into the light. Fall settled gently over Maple Hollow. The leaves turned to fire, crimson, amber, and gold, and the air carried the scent of wood smoke and old memories. Clara stood in front of the community bulletin board outside the town diner. She pinched a small flyer into place with 2 wooden clothespins. An evening of remembrance and hope, featuring the Maple Hollow Community Band. Tuesday, 6:30 p.m. at the high school auditorium. Free entry. All are welcome. She stepped back to read it, then smiled, her eyes flicking toward the corner where Caleb's name was printed under special guest solo. The auditorium buzzed with anticipation. The community band rehearsed each piece twice, polishing every note. But Caleb, he wasn't playing with polish. He was playing with presence. Clara had handed him a solo arrangement. Nothing flashy, just a slow, reflective blend of taps and amazing grace. A tribute to those he'd lost, and to the part of himself he was slowly finding again. Play how it feels, she told him softly, not how it sounds. He gave her a slow nod. I'm not sure I'll get through it. She laid a hand on his shoulder. Then don't try to get through it. Just go into it, and let us follow you. The lights in the auditorium were low. Flickering candles lined the edge of the stage. Every seat was filled. Parents, veterans, teachers, students. People who hadn't been to a concert in years now sat with tissues folded in their laps, ready. Backstage, Caleb stood alone, trumpet in hand, trembling but grounded. Clara found him staring at a folded piece of paper. He looked up. It's the names of my team, all 6 of them. She took a breath, then said, then take them with you. Let the notes carry them home. Trumpet the solo. The moment Caleb stepped into the spotlight, the room fell silent. He lifted the trumpet slowly, like it weighed more than it ever had before. And then he played. The first notes of taps echoed through the auditorium. Clean, gentle, reverent. But halfway through he paused. Then, soft as a whisper, he wove the melody into amazing grace. Not a perfect transition, not flawless, but honest, real. You could feel the ache in every note. Somewhere in the second verse, his lip trembled, but he kept going. A woman in the 3rd row began to cry. A man in uniform removed his hat and bowed his head. And Clara? She closed her eyes and smiled softly, because he was playing his pain into peace. When a final note faded, there was no immediate applause, just stillness. Then, one by one, people rose to their feet, not in celebration, in respect, for a man who didn't perform, but testified. Sometimes, music isn't played for an audience. It's played for ghosts, for scars, for moments too sacred to speak. And when one broken man lifts his trumpet to the silence, he invites the whole town to remember and to heal. After the performance, no one crowded him. They didn't need to. Caleb walked off stage, not as a shadow, but as a man who had found his voice again. The performance ended, but something lingered in the air, something deeper than applause or candle smoke. It was stillness, respect, and in the case of Caleb Jennings, something like release. The next morning, Clara arrived at the auditorium to gather leftover programs and pack away music stands. To her surprise, a trumpet case sat quietly on the front row. Next to it, a folded piece of sheet music, handwritten, title, For the Ones Who Never Made a Home. At the bottom, Caleb had scrawled a note. Thank you for giving me a place to play until I could learn to breathe again. Clara sat in the front row for a long time, her hand over her heart. She didn't cry. She just whispered, "Play on, son," and tucked the music into her satchel. 1 week later, Caleb returned, not to perform, but to listen, to laugh, to tune a violin for a nervous teenager, to carry music stands for Mrs. Wren without being asked. He joined the band permanently, started leading warm-ups, brought a thermos of coffee each week, 2 cups, one for him, one for Clara, and one Friday morning, he surprised everyone when he showed up at the high school assembly. He stood on stage in his Marine jacket, quiet, strong. He said just this: I'm not a teacher, I'm not a preacher, but I know what it feels like to lose your sound, and I know what it means to find it again. If you're hurting, if you're angry, if you feel like no one sees you, come to the auditorium. Tuesdays at 6. There's a seat waiting for you, and maybe, just maybe a song. Every October now, the Maple Hollow Community Band holds an evening concert titled Echoes of Grace. Veterans play side by side with high schoolers. Parents and widows sit in candlelight, wrapped in blankets, sipping cider. And at the center, still not loud, still not flashy, sits Caleb, trumpet in hand, head high, scars visible. And every year, he plays the same piece he wrote. Not for the crowd, not for applause, but for the 6 names folded in his pocket, and the one teacher who heard his silence. Sometimes we carry our pain like a locked instrument, silent, heavy, and used. But in the right hands, with a little patience and a lot of heart, even the quietest soul can make the loudest healing sound. He didn't need fixing. He just needed someone to say, "You still belong in the music." A warm, late autumn evening. The auditorium glows softly. Candles flicker on the steps. Inside, the final note of Caleb's solo fades into the quiet. Some songs don't end. They just echo. Some wounds don't need fixing. They need listening, and a song brave enough to be played. Thank you for spending time with us here at Hearthside Stories 25, where every story is a reminder that love still heals, hope still restores, and home is never too far away. Until next time, keep your heart open and your story burning bright.